Hello friends, welcome to the King YouTube channel. Meghan is upset that CBS isn't backing down and she's not pleased about it at all. If you've watched my recent videos, you're likely aware that Meghan is facing some challenges. To be blunt, Meghan is quite delusional. What she believes is due to her own talent and abilities is actually just a facade. The reality is that people are exploiting her. Have you noticed that this photo seems to depict someone who genuinely looks happy, someone truly engaged in someone else's story? Of course, true warmth, kindness, and empathy are displayed when one is genuinely empathetic. Let's also not forget the various topics Meghan Markle discussed during her recent trip to Colombia. Did you notice how she has lowered her voice to sound more authoritative? You do realize that every single trick is scrutinized literally, right? But did it work? As we saw in the most recent CBS interview with Jane Pauley, things didn't exactly go according to plan. This is something that might vary depending on where you're from, and everyone's been discussing what really happened behind the scenes. This includes how Meghan had a bit of a meltdown because she thought she could dictate terms, even though she had just signed a contract with CBS, a major corporation, because she's the Duchess of Sussex. When you first meet her, you're expected to call her Ma AM+. She's married to the Duke of Sussex, who was once part of the British monarchy. The Duke of Sussex, yes, that's his title. She assumed this gave her a lot of influence, but then something happened. Some might argue that Harry and Meghan have an inflated sense of their own importance, especially considering the lack of success in this latest CBS interview. What's interesting here is that their message got lost. While everyone was talking about Meghan and Harry being on CBS, do you know why she was really scheduled to appear? You probably don't, do you? That's the issue. What's fascinating is that this is the case. Behind the scenes, there's a particular photo you'll see when Meghan seemed to lose her composure because she had no idea she'd be sharing the stage with these two individuals. This was the problem that arose behind the scenes. It seems this wasn't fully agreed upon. Meghan had no clue she'd be sharing the stage with these people, and she indicated that she wasn't prepared or fully understood their stories. However, given that she was supposed to be the main focus and the one to promote this specific incentive, would it have made a difference? Could it be that she didn't show even a little bit of empathy, perhaps putting an arm around this person to show she was engaged and interested? This was reportedly the feedback CBS received behind the scenes. Meghan, once again, simply assumed she would be delivering her narrative in glorious technicolor, looking stunning in her usual head-to-toe beige. You can understand how Prince Harry's constant interjections about how people were really first responders, going on about something nobody knew about, wasn't particularly to her liking. Can you see the problem? Harry, on the other hand, isn't someone you can rely on. Do you agree with me? Let's do a quick survey. If you also think Harry isn't trustworthy, comment with number 1. If you think he is, comment with number 2. This is going to be an issue for Harry and Meghan because, as we've seen, she quickly loses interest in initiatives like 40x40x40 and others she's taken on. I've heard CBS is still planning to follow up on this incentive, and that's going to be a problem for them. Right now, it's digital surveillance and childcare, but in reality, it's a very limited attention span plan. What do you think? CBS, on the other hand, isn't planning to back down. They want to assess how much the Duke and Duchess have really been involved and what actions they've taken to lead this initiative. They're definitely looking to bring more people on board to sit alongside Meghan. As I mentioned earlier, this didn't sit well with the former Princess of Sussex, now the Duchess of Sussex, but CBS doesn't care about that. They're in the business of making television, and as Harry and Meghan are learning, if you want screen time, you need to deliver, and most importantly, you need to perform well. So far, their most recent CBS interview hasn't been one of the most viewed or talked about, which means they know they have a problem. However, they also know they need to follow up on it, which is something the Duke and Duchess of Sussex probably hope CBS would just forget about. Jane went further than Anderson and Tom's softball interviews. These two need to stop and face the truth about the lies they've told. Meghan's facial expressions and fluttering lashes showed she was angry at Jane. She showed no compassion when the parents spoke. Why go to Colombia when these issues are happening here at home? Do the work where you live. Gather your wealthy friends and donate to a local cause that addresses these problems. People do charity work in their own countries for many causes. Meghan would hug a stranger for a photo op in a heartbeat, but couldn't show a grieving mother some compassion. Besides, that grieving mother was getting more attention than Meghan. That's what the glare was about. I found her lack of empathy toward this grieving mother appalling. To make matters worse, she glared at her with anger. Meghan is utterly heartless. She's a narcissist. She doesn't show empathy because she simply lacks it. Remember, Meghan, we don't care about your title in the US, and we won't call you Duchess or Ma'am. Clearly, Markle doesn't have an ounce of kindness or compassion in her entire body. She has zero compassion for her own sick father, who gave her everything. That speaks volumes about her character or lack thereof. Chances are she suffers from a malignant narcissistic personality disorder with a touch of borderline personality disorder. She's seriously troubled. CBS should never have given them a platform to exploit these poor parents and the tragedy of their children to promote herself. I hope these parents have learned they were being used and won't cooperate with them again. Rachel is so cold-hearted to do this to them. At least some of those parents have encountered Markle before and knew what to expect. Some have suggested they were paid, but there's no evidence for that claim. I don't think there's any amount of money those two could offer me to let them exploit my tragedy, but that's just me. Her smug expression during that interview was disgusting. She wanted the spotlight on herself the entire time, even though it wasn't about her. She's self-centered, and Harry is clueless. They'll say things to gain sympathy, but they don't have the courage to follow through. They'll continue to bully others for as long as they can get away with it. They are very bitter and greedy people. What story does she have to tell? She was a bit part actress, there's no story there. The only thing that comes out of her mouth is either fabrications or outright lies. She hasn't done anything worth talking about. It's the same lies over and over. She can only go back to that washing up liquid ad, which didn't bring about any change. Like everything else she says, it's just lies upon lies. Meghan wanted to be the center of attention, but she was the least interesting person there. The couple who lost their son was far more compelling and should have been the focus, not Meghan the complainer. She tried to make a compassionate face, but she's a terrible actress and it didn't work. I'm proud of Polly for standing her ground as a journalist. Stand up to the liar, Markle, and don't let her push you around. Meanwhile, talk is cheap and actions speak louder than words. No one is listening to or believing anything Meghan says. Markle looks uncaring and indifferent. She's all hype and nothing beneath it. That interview exposed Markle for who she really is. It was all about her, even when she was sharing the stage with parents who lost their child to suicide. Markle has no empathy. I noticed the look she gave that grieving mother and was appalled. People are starting to wake up to who Meghan really is about time, isn't it? I've noticed that Meghan changes her voice almost as often as her skin tone. I would have loved to see the meltdown. Harry's wife is comfortable letting teenage boys rest their heads on her chest, but can't show a grieving mother any compassion. That says it all, really. Markle is being cornered again. She's lost all control. No one is bowing or curtsying to her shrill demands. Another day, another meltdown from the perpetually angry and screeching royal. From the first viewing of the interview, I thought Jane was subtly taking jabs at Meghan. Especially when it comes to Meghan's habit of bringing a camera crew to display compassion, using critically ill children as props, and exploiting tragedies and other people's pain to promote herself. It's clear her superficiality was irritated by someone else speaking. How dare they? She didn't want to share the stage with Taja either. Meanwhile, Harry is planning a trip to New York City during Prince William's Earthshot Prize visit in October. Harry is also releasing the paperback of Spare to coincide with King Charles' trip to Australia. Coincidence? I think not. What would happen if no one reported on Harry's trip or book release until well after the other royal events, always piggybacking on other family members and the next king? Just Harry indeed.